אהלן, שלום לכולם, אני באמסטרדם אצל סטיבן בירץ בסמינר טויוארי, וחשבנו שזו הזדמנות מצוינת לספר לכם על הסמינר הבא שאנחנו הולכים לעשות בישראל. Hello Steve, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
I would like you to tell us please about this unique Manaca style, his approach and to the meridians, to the 8 extraordinary meridians.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that characterize the Manaca system. One of them is that as a medical doctor who studied traditional acupuncture, he was very interested in trying to find bridges between traditional thinking and modern thinking. So in his efforts to try to link traditional thinking with modern thinking, he was also looking at what might be possible explanations for how traditional acupuncture might work, and that led him to investigate traditional concepts in ways that are really innovative, that make a real contribution to understanding the nature of meridians, points, how points might work, what you can do with points, and so on. And the second thing that comes out of this was, in these investigations, he looked at how in looking at how the body responds to his investigations. How, if I do this, what happens? If I touch this point with this thing, what happens? He was able to map out characteristic kind of responses of the body, which led to supporting the development of a treatment system. The treatment system began accidentally for the treatment of burns, where he developed the iron pumping cords as a treatment for burns. And then, while trying to understand, well, how does that work, he then started looking into traditional acupuncture ideas, and that led to, well, can I use these methods to produce treatment effects using traditional acupuncture ideas? And that led to the development of this system. And the characteristics of the system is that it uses really gentle treatment methods. I mean, obviously, if you have to moxer a point, that's not quite so gentle, it's quite stimulating. Mm-hmm. If you need to do bloodletting, that's not exactly gentle, although you can do it very gently, it's more stimulating. But by and large, he found that you can use really soft treatment techniques using this theory that he uncovered and mapped out, using these treatment points in this particular manner, using these what are called polarity agents with the iron pumping cords, that you can trigger whole body responses and changes that are predictable changes.
What's so special about the 8 extraordinary vessels that he incorporated to his system?
Well, the way to understand his thinking is to step outside of just pure acupuncture theory and to step outside of a normal way of thinking about the anatomical body, which is a common thing in modern medicine and biology, yes. And to look at kind of more physics ideas that might underlie how biological systems function, right? Rather than looking at the neurochemistry or the biochemistry, but step behind that and looking at more subtle energetic phenomena that might be happening and the principles by which those more subtle energetic phenomena might operate. Mm-hmm. So what Manaca uncovered is that it looks like the extraordinary vessels don't work because I needle this point and that point and it creates a simple dynamic action between the points, but by needling this point on this meridian and that point on that meridian, like pericardium 6 and spleen 4, it activates this kind of line in the body where the line is a kind of fulcrum for yin-yang. So the line represents a division between this yin surface and that yang surface. And he found that, for example, the renmai separates the left and right halves of the body, and the left and right halves of the body are yin-yang halves. The dumai separates also left and right halves of the body, but on the posterior, whereas the daimai separates up and down halves of the body, which are also yin-yang pairs. And when we treat pericardium 6, spleen 4, if you look at the pathway of pericardium and spleen meridians, they lie on the medial aspect of the arms and legs on a line that separates between front and back halves, if you join the two. And likewise, triple burner 5, gallbladder 41, they lie on the triple burner meridian, the gallbladder meridian, which lie on lines that separate the front and back halves on the lateral aspect of the limbs. So we started uncovering this idea that maybe the extraordinary vessels stimulate these kind of fulcrums between these yin and yang halves, which led him to investigate and discover the properties of the octahedron. Because in his model, that when you separate front and back, when you separate left and right, and when you separate upper and lower, and you join those fulcrum together, those dividing lines together, you end up with a structure called an octahedron. And so Manneke thought, well, maybe this octahedral structure is somehow enfolded in the body, and it still functions on some kind of primitive biological level, because the properties of an octahedron are very important. An octahedral structure, as defined by, what was his name? Buckminster Fuller, who was a mathematician that studied the physical properties of different geometrical structures, he said that the octahedron is the most stable structure in the universe, meaning it sends energy from each of its 6 points to the center and sends energy from the center to the 6 points. So that structure is inherently very stable, and it would be natural when Manneke uncovered the potential role of an octahedron in relation to the layout of the 12 meridians and the extraordinary vessels, that maybe the octahedron is somehow enfolded in the body and also producing this kind of stabilizing influence within the body, which in Chinese theory is balancing between yin and yang halves, right? And so he also did some investigations. He had a friend who looked at sweating patterns and discovered that under certain circumstances you can make people sweat in a way that shows octahedral divisions in the body, where they sweat along this line on the middle here to the navel, and along this line up along the rami here, and this area on the front of the torso sweats, and this side doesn't.
Right.
And then this side over here sweats, and the other side doesn't. So, in fact, I was really excited when I got that message from him. It's like, oh my God, maybe this is real. Maybe there's a biological basis to this crazy stuff. And when I got back to England that summer, I showed this to my father, who was a physician, and he got really excited because he was treating these patients, this family, with this very rare genetic disease with a regressive gene. So the problem with this rare genetic disorder is if there's any pressure in the perineal area, it causes these bizarre flushing patterns. And he was writing a paper about this, and he showed me the flushing patterns that he's most commonly seen, and it was, oh my God, it's the octahedron.
Wow.
This is really weird. And so then when I got back to Boston that summer, after the summer, I went and hid in the Harvard Medical Library. At that time, you used to be able to get free access before internet and everything. You could get free access and go down into the stacks in the basement where all the old copies of journals were. And I would just go through there and come out with stacks of journals and copy particular articles. And I was looking for any evidence of octahedral system enfolded in the body, and I uncovered some more evidence of that these principles of how things are distributed in the body between front and back, left and right, and upper and lower halves, that I found further evidence of that in terms of sweating, in terms of flushing patterns, in terms of release of endorphins and specificity of binding sites for chemicals like endorphins. So, in other words, it kind of realized Manneke's dream that maybe we're looking at a biological basis to understand some kind of background operating system that underlies the meridian system and the points. So
which is the X signal system, basically?
Manneke called it the X signal system because it was really, a large part of it is not well known, so therefore it's called the X. And once it becomes defined, it's no longer X. X meaning the unknown. But then the other side of it was, Manneke was a brilliant clinician. He was stunning what he could do. His treatment effect, I never saw anybody come to his clinic in pain that didn't leave in less pain. It was really dramatic.
I wanted to ask you, you practice Toyohari
Yep.
at your clinic, and you teach Toyohari all over the world. When do you decide in your clinic when to use Toyohari, when to use Manneka?
Well, so people should follow my bad habits. there is no rational way to do it. I think you do the treatment that you feel most comfortable doing. And over time, if you have a fixed idea, oh, Manaca only does this, it just makes the muscles relax, so I'm going to do Manaca when I see these musculoskeletal things, then you'll lose the possibility of what Manaca can do for internal problems. And if for Toyohari you think, oh, Toyohari is really good at regulating chi, which means I'm helping, it's maybe better for psycho-emotional problems of patients, you miss the possibility of what Manaca system can do for that. So I try not to get caught in this simplistic way of thinking. So how I do it, okay, at a certain point, I remember years ago I would just pick the pattern that was clearest. Okay, I think I know what I'm doing if I do that one because it looks like it's clear. But now I've practiced both systems for a long time. I can do either on any patient. The Manaca system is more difficult to adapt to an incredibly sensitive patient. So I tend not to use it on children. I don't need to because I got Shonishin and Meridian therapy. It works fine on children. I haven't needed the Manaca system much, but I could use it. Whereas on patients who come in with whiplash and chronic neck, shoulder pain and back pain and what will sound like it would be really good to do the Manaca treatment on them, they also respond really well to Toyohari if you know how to do it. So it's difficult to give a clear set of rules. You kind of get a feeling for me, okay, I'm going to be teaching Manaca next month, I better start doing a bit more in practice. Or now the Toyohari program's doing, I better do a little bit less Manaca, for example. That's not clinical, that's just from my own personal experience. But if I try one system and it doesn't work, I can try the other one. And if one works, the other one usually does. Most of my patients have a positive experience.
You wrote with Dr. Manaca the book Chasing the Dragon's Tail, recommended book you must have.
Over here, right?
Yeah.
And you know there's a German version of this. So
German version.
You have to stop this for a second, Mark.
So we're back.
We're back. We're talking about this book from Dr. Manaca, and this is his painting of a dragon. I asked him, can you do a painting? Manaca was really an amazing painter. He was a really good artist. So he drew this dragon for the book. But then there's a German version of this available. And last year a Spanish version of the book also came out.
Wow.
My friend Manuel Rodriguez translated it. So slowly it's catching on, which is very nice to see. Because his treatment effects were quite stunning. And there are sometimes, what Manaca said about his treatment is the following. A patient comes in, they've got all these different problems. It's really difficult to understand what to do. They have to see different doctors for all these different problems. And there's no clear strategy to deal with the patient. You do this kind of treatment and all these different problems start responding. It's a very simple diagnosis approach. It's like it cuts the Gordian knot, if you will. It just gets to the heart of the patient and allows you to influence many things simultaneously. And that's a huge advantage.
Okay, now I want to ask you a personal question. You were in Israel 3 times already?
Yes.
So we did the Manaca seminar and we did the Shonishin seminar. And last time we did the Meridian therapy.
Yep.
And on May, you're coming back for a Manaca and an open hourly point seminar. So I want to ask you, what do you think about the Israel acupuncture community that you met so far?
Well, first of all, it's very enlivened. It's very lively. I'm also impressed by the fact that in Israel, acupuncture is more part of the healthcare system. I like the fact that it's in hospitals. I like the fact that some folks are employed by the National Health Service to work in hospitals. I like the fact that in the hospital in Jerusalem,
Shari Tzedek,
the acupuncturists are hired as part of the regular hospital staff. This is really new. This is not happening in other countries. And for me, this is very, very exciting. This is the future where acupuncture is part of the complementary medicine, where we work alongside and with medicine. Whereas in Holland, I'm considered an alternative medical practitioner, which for me is a derogatory term. The doctors don't want to work with me and they don't refer.
Yes.
So far. So seeing this difference is very exciting, and also I don't need translation, which is also very exciting, and people laugh at my jokes, which is unbelievable. They're so rare that people laugh at my jokes, mostly because they're not so funny, but either you're humoring me or you got it, I don't know. But I have, in the workshops I've done in Tel Aviv, there's a level of excitement that's really exciting. It's really fun to teach.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, maybe it's the problem of translation, and my jokes are lost in translation, so I'm not really very funny in other countries. I don't know. But
No,
anyway, it's
people in Israel told me that you were funny.
I'm funny,
you're
okay.
funny.
But anyway, I have enjoyed teaching in Tel Aviv, and I think the acupuncture community is very active, which I like to see.
What do you think about the level of expertise?
In general, I think from what I understand, the basic training for acupuncture, the requirements of the basic training, it's quite high in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
As you're aware, in Europe, where there's licensing only in Switzerland and parts of Portugal,
Yes.
there's no requirements except to be able to join one of the associations. Therefore, there's a problem of the education in a number of countries is not quite enough.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I think the level of expertise that comes with lessons training is that people are less confident and sometimes less skillful, I think. Whereas I don't see that problem in Israel. I think you've cracked the nut for basic educational in acupuncture in Israel. It seems to be pretty good.
Great. And tell me, do you think that practitioners in Israel, where they practice other styles of acupuncture, they can come and learn Manaca for a seminar and then integrate it in their clinical
I
work?
usually boast. You turn up at my class on Friday, and by Monday morning, provided you've got a pair of iron pumping cords, you can practice. The Manaca system is very readily adaptable. Of course, anytime you learn something new, you're struggling with, should I use it on this patient? Dare I use it on this patient? Should I just do what I normally do? How do I integrate it in? But the system is so simple to learn. The techniques are very straightforward and simple, and it's very systematic. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, very systematic.
Very Japanese.
Yes and no. If you spend more time in Japan, you'll see sometimes some people are very chaotic in their thinking.
Okay.
They're very good at what they do, but you can't reproduce it. More
Okay.
difficult. Whereas when it's step by step, the way we do the Manaca system, the way we do the Toyohari, it makes it more reproducible, so it's easier to do it.
Great.
So the Manaca system, provided you've got the basic needles and you've practiced in the course when I teach, the next day you can try it, no problem. I remember one time Manaca told me, I was teaching in the US and I'd been there many years before, and this guy came up to me on the second time I was there, and he says, I did this workshop with you years ago. He did like a 2-day workshop, and I learned these basic how to use iron pumping cords from you 2 years, and that's all I do on all of my patients. I stopped doing anything else. And Manaca was like, really? Was that enough? Because there were no books published in English. So, but even using the simple form of the system, you can get some reasonably good clinical results. If you use the step-by-step process with the details of each step, you can treat and get successful results. If you learn more of that, so that you learn more details on each of the steps, you can use it as a whole system to treat anyone, if you want.
Great.
That's the idea.
Great, thank you very much. We are waiting to see you in Israel on May. אם לא נרשמתם עדיין, אתם מוזמנים להירשם. נשארו מעט מקומות לסמינר של מנאקה, יותר מקומות לסמינר של הנקודות הפתוחות. כל שאלה, כל בעיה, תרימו טלפון אליי, אל שחף וואליס, ואנחנו נשמח לענות לכם. צ'או.
Ciao.